I remember the exact moment she said it. We were standing in my son Daniel's kitchen. The afternoon light falling across the marble counters I helped him pick when he bought the house. She didn't even lower her voice. I just think some people need to understand their place, she said, smoothing her perfect hair, her engagement ring flashing like a warning. And honestly, you're not really family yet to us. Not the kind that should be involved in the wedding decisions. The words didn't sound real at first. I thought maybe I misunderstood her, that maybe stress had twisted her tone. But Daniel stayed quiet, eyes fixed on his phone. And that silence hurt more than anything she said. I nodded slowly, because dignity sometimes looks like agreement when it's really restraint. If that's how you feel, I told her softly, I won't interfere. She smiled then, relieved, what she just solved a problem. The wedding was 2 weeks away. I had already paid for the rehearsal dinner. Sewn lace into the hem of her veil when she claimed, the boutique version. Didn't. Personal enough. And spent months pretending I didn't notice the way she edited me out of conversations about my own son's life. I went home that evening and sat in the quiet living room Daniel grew up in. His childhood drawings were still tucked into a box beneath the coffee table. And I held one of them, a stick figure family with a big smiling son. And wondered when I stopped being part of that picture. 3 days before the wedding she sent a group message. We're keeping the ceremony intimate. Only immediate family. My name wasn't on the updated guest list. Daniel called later, voice tight. Mom, it's just temporary stress. You know how weddings are. I do, I said. And I know when I'm not wanted. He didn't argue. That silence again. The morning of the wedding arrived cold and gray. I woke up early out of habit, expecting to rush somewhere, to fix something, to be useful. Instead, I made tea and sat by the window watching the neighborhood come alive. Somewhere across town my son was getting married. And I was folding laundry like it was an ordinary Saturday. Around noon my sister called. Are you ready? I'm not going, I said gently. She paused, shocked. What happened? I was told I'm not family. I replied, and even saying it out loud made my chest ache. She swore under her breath, but I changed the subject. I didn't want pity. I wanted peace. By mid-afternoon I was baking lemon bread, the kind Daniel loved as a teenager. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and familiar. I tried not to think about the ceremony, about whether he looked happy, about whether he noticed my absence. At 4 o'clock my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I hesitated before answering. Hello, Mom, his voice cracked. There were loud voices behind him, confusion, someone crying. Can you come? My heart raced. What happened? The wedding, it's falling apart. I grabbed my coat without asking another question. The venue was a lakeside hotel, all glass and white flowers. When I arrived, people were standing in small tense groups, whispering. The music had stopped. Daniel stood near the entrance, tie loosened, eyes red. He looked like a boy again, lost, overwhelmed. What's wrong? I asked, stepping closer. He swallowed hard. She told everyone you weren't invited because you were toxic. But my aunt asked why you paid for dinner if you weren't welcome, and then her bridesmaid said she'd been talking badly about our family for months. It just exploded. Inside I could hear raised voices. Her voice. She's controlling. She always has been, she was shouting somewhere beyond the doors. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I didn't know she said those things. About you, about us. I touched his arm. You don't have to explain right now. He shook his head. I should have listened to you. I should have paid attention. Before I could answer, the doors opened and she stormed out, dress rustling like a storm cloud. When she saw me, her expression hardened. Of course you came, she snapped. Trying to make yourself the center of attention again. Daniel stepped between us. Stop. He said quietly, and I heard something new in his voice, something firm. She froze. What? You told me she was overbearing. He continued. But you lied about her to everyone. You told people she refused to support us. She paid for half this wedding. Her eyes flickered. It doesn't matter, she said sharply. This is our day, she shouldn't even be here. He looked at me then, and I saw apology, regret, and something else, clarity. I asked her to come, he said. Silence fell between us. The argument that followed blurred together, accusations, tears, guests slipping quietly toward the exits. Eventually she threw her bouquet onto a chair and walked away, heels echoing against the marble floor. The wedding never happened. Hours later Daniel sat beside me on a bench outside the venue, watching the lake darken with evening. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like he used to after losing a soccer game as a child. I feel stupid. He said finally. You feel hurt. I corrected gently. I ignored so many signs. He whispered. She kept pushing you away and I let it happen because I didn't want conflict. I didn't say I knew. Parents learn when to hold silence like a shield. He turned to me. Why didn't you fight back when she said you weren't family? Because family isn't proven by arguing, I said. It's proven by staying when it matters. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I squeezed his hand. You don't need to apologize for loving someone. Just learn from it. In the weeks that followed, he moved slowly through the aftermath. The house felt quieter when he visited, when he was relearning who he was without her voice in his ear. One evening he came over carrying a box of wedding decorations. I don't know what to do with these, he said. We sorted through them together at the kitchen table. Between ribbons and unused place cards, he laughed for the first time in days. You know, I thought being an adult never making mistakes. It means learning how to recover from them, I replied. He started coming by every Sunday. Sometimes we cooked, sometimes we just sat and talked about ordinary things. The distance that had grown between us began to shrink, replaced by a quiet honesty we hadn't shared in years. One afternoon he said, I didn't realize how much she tried to isolate me from everyone. Even my friends noticed. That happened slowly, I told him. Not all at once. He nodded, thoughtful. Months passed. Spring came, and with it a sense of renewal. He painted his living room a lighter color, sold the furniture they picked together, and started volunteering at a local youth center. I watched him rebuild himself piece by piece, stronger than before. One evening he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo of us from years ago, him at 10 years old, arms around my waist. Both of us laughing at something outside the frame. I forgot what it felt like to be this close to you, he said softly. I swallowed the emotion rising in my throat. You never lost me, Daniel. You just needed time to find your way back. He smiled, genuine and warm. The wedding that fell apart became a turning point in our lives. Not a disaster, but a revelation. He learned to listen to his instincts. I learned that sometimes stepping back creates the space someone needs to see the truth. And on a warm summer evening, months later, we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. Do you regret going to the venue that day? He asked suddenly. No, I said. Because I didn't go to prove anything, I went because you needed me. He leaned his head against my shoulder, just like he used to when he was small. Next time, he said softly. If I ever get married again, you won't just be invited. You'll be the first person I ask to stand beside me. I laughed through tears. I'll hold you to that. The past didn't vanish overnight, but it softened. Shaped into something that made us stronger. Sometimes love doesn't mean included in every celebration. Sometimes it means waiting at home with lemon bread in the oven, ready to show up when everything falls apart. And as the sky darkened and the porch lights flickered on, I realized something simple but powerful. I had never stopped being family, no matter what anyone said. And in the end, the bond between a mother and her son proved stronger than a wedding dress, stronger than hurtful words, stronger even than silence. Because real family isn't decided by invitations. It's decided by who shows up when the music stops. The weeks after the wedding that never happened felt strangely calm. Like the air after a storm when everything is quiet, but still damp with what just passed. Daniel started coming over more often. Not just on Sundays but sometimes on random evenings when the house felt too empty for him. He would knock softly, the way he used to when he was a teenager who'd stayed out too late and didn't want to wake me. One night he stood in the doorway holding a grocery bag. "I brought dinner," he said, lifting it like an offering. "Or at least something that looked edible at the store." I laughed and stepped aside. "Come in before it gets cold." We ate at the small kitchen table, talking about nothing important, a neighbor's new dog, a movie he watched, the weather turning warmer. It felt like we were rebuilding our rhythm one ordinary conversation at a time. After dinner he grew quiet, staring at his hands. "She sent me a message today." My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "What did she say?" "She wants to talk. Says everything got blown out of proportion." He exhaled slowly. "Part of me wonders if I should meet her, just for closure." I studied his face. He didn't look hopeful, he looked tired. "If you go," I said gently, "go because you need answers, not because you feel guilty." He nodded, absorbing that. He nutted the next afternoon at a cafe near the park. When he came over later that evening, I could tell immediately how it went. His shoulders were tense, and he paced the living room like a man trying to outrun a memory. "She said you manipulated me," he said quietly. "She said you turned everyone against her." I felt the sting, but I didn't interrupt. "And for a second," he continued, voice cracking, "that almost believed it again. That old feeling like I had to choose sides." I reached for his hand. "You never have to choose between love and respect. The right person won't make you." He sank onto the couch beside me. I told her I wasn't angry about the wedding anymore. I was angry about the lies. About how she made me feel like I had to shrink my world to keep her happy. "What did she say?" He gave a small, sad smile. "She said I was weak for listening to you." The words hung in the air heavy. "And what did you say?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes steady. "I told her listening to my mother doesn't make me weak. It reminds me who I am." Something inside me loosened then, a knot I didn't know I'd been carrying. He didn't see her again after that. Summer settled in fully. Warm evenings stretching long into the night. Daniel started inviting friends over again, filling his house with laughter instead of tension. One evening he surprised me by bringing a stack of old photo albums. "I want to remember who I was before all of this," he said. We sat on the living room floor flipping through pictures, birthday parties, school plays, vacations where we'd both looked sunburned and happy. At one point he stopped on a photo of us dancing in the kitchen years ago. "You always made everything feel safe," he whispered. I swallowed hard. "I tried." He leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. "I think I forgot how to be myself. I kept trying to be the version of me she wanted." "You were trying to be loved," I said. "There's no shame in that." He smiled faintly. "I'm learning that love isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass." One afternoon in late July, we visited the lakeside where the wedding had been planned. The venue looked peaceful now, empty chairs stacked neatly. No trace of the chaos that had unfolded months before. "Do you ever think about what would happen if you stayed home that day?" he asked. I watched the water ripple under the sun. "I didn't go there to stop the wedding," I said. "I went because you called." He nodded slowly. "I keep thinking, if you hadn't come I might have married her anyway." Just to avoid the embarrassment. I looked at him carefully. Then maybe everything happened exactly when it needed to. He skipped a smod across the water, watching it sink. "I used to think losing that wedding was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And now I think it saved me." We sat there for a long time without speaking. Life moved forward quietly after that. Daniel began therapy, something he resisted at first, but soon admitted helped him see patterns he'd ignored. He started setting boundaries, small ones at first, like saying no to overtime at work or taking a weekend trip alone. One evening he arrived at my house carrying a small potted plant. "For your window," he said, "something new." I placed it on the sill where the afternoon sun hit strongest. "It's beautiful." He shrugged shyly. "I'm trying to be better at small gestures." You've always been good at them, I said. You just forgot. As autumn approached, our conversations shifted from healing to hope. He talked about traveling, about taking a cooking class, about dating again someday, not soon, but eventually. Do you think I'll ever trust someone like that again? He asked one night. Yes, I said without hesitation. But next time you'll trust yourself more. He thought about that for a while, then smiled. I like that version of me already. One crisp evening in October, almost a year after the day I was told I wasn't family, he invited me to dinner at his house. He had cooked everything himself. Roasted vegetables, pasta, even a small cake that leaned slightly to one side. I wanted tonight to be simple, he said. Just us. We ate slowly, talking and laughing. At one point he raised his glass and looked at me with a warmth that filled the room. Thank you for staying, he said softly. Even when I didn't make it easy. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That's what mothers do. He smiled, eyes shining. Later, as we sat on the porch watching the stars appear one by one, he leaned back and sighed. You know, I don't feel broken anymore. I feel different, stronger. You are, I said. You faced something painful and chose to grow instead of hide. He was quiet for a moment, then turned to me. I want you to know something. When she said you weren't family, I didn't defend you the way I should have. That will always be my biggest regret. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I smiled. You defended me when it mattered most. You chose truth. He nodded slowly, accepting that. The night grew cooler and we wrapped ourselves in blankets, watching the quiet neighborhood settle into sleep. For the first time in a long while there was no tension between us, no unspoken hurt. Just peace. And as I looked at my son, not the boy who had been confused and pulled in two directions, but the man who had learned to stand firmly in his own heart, I realized something profound. The wedding that fell apart wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A moment that forced us to rediscover each other, to rebuild trust. To understand that family isn't something anyone else gets to define. It's something you carry, even when the world tells you to stay home. Especially then. Winter came slowly that year, soft rain turning to frost overnight, and Daniel seemed lighter with every passing week. He started bringing music back into his house again. Old records we used to play when he was little. And sometimes he would send me short videos of himself trying new recipes, laughing when they didn't turn out right. One Sunday morning he showed up at my door holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought we could walk, he said. I need fresh air. We wandered through the park near my neighborhood, leaves crunching under our shoes. He told me about a new project at work, about a coworker who kept recommending books, about how therapy was helping him see patterns he never noticed before. I keep thinking about how close I came to losing you, he said suddenly. You never lost me, I replied. But I almost pushed you away for someone who didn't respect you. He stopped walking and looked at me. I don't want to be that person again. I touched his arm gently. Then don't. Growth is a choice you make every day. He nodded, breathing out slowly. December arrived with quiet celebrations. We decorated my living room together, hanging the same ornaments he used as a child. He laughed when he found the crooked wooden star he made in 2nd grade. I thought this was lost, he said. I kept everything, I told him. Even the messy parts. Christmas felt different that year, smaller, softer, but warmer somehow. It was just the two of us, sharing dinner and stories. The television playing old holiday movies in the background. At one point he handed me a wrapped box. Inside was a smaller bracelet with a small engraved word. Home. He looked nervous as I read it. I realized. He said quietly. Home isn't a place or a person who demands you change. It's where you're allowed to be fully yourself. And that's always been you for me. Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled through them. You've always been my home too. The new year came with unexpected changes. Daniel started volunteering at a community center, helping teenagers with job applications and resumes. One evening he told me, I want to give people the kind of support I almost forgot existed. I saw confidence returning to him, not loud or flashy, but steady. One afternoon in early spring he invited me to a small art fair downtown. As we walked past booths filled with paintings and handmade crafts, I noticed the way he greeted strangers easily now, the way his shoulders stayed relaxed. At one booth a young woman was selling watercolor landscapes. She had paint smudges on her fingers and a gentle laugh that carried across the crowd. Daniel spoke with her longer than usual, asking questions about her work. As we walked away he looked slightly embarrassed. "Her name's Maya," he said. "She teaches art classes." I raised an eyebrow playfully. And nothing," he said quickly, though a small smile betrayed him. Weeks later he mentioned her again, how they met for coffee after one of her classes, how easy the conversation felt. I listened quietly, careful not to push. "I'm taking it slow," he told me one evening. "I don't want to rush into anything just because I'm lonely." "That sounds wise," I said. "What matters is how you feel when you're with her." He thought for a moment. "Calm," he admitted. "Like I don't have to perform." That word lingered with me. Calm. It sounded like healing. Spring turned into summer, and Daniel's life grew fuller. He and Maya spent time hiking, visiting bookstores, and sometimes joining me for dinner. She was warm without being overwhelming, kind without trying too hard. The first time she came over, she hugged me gently and said, "I've heard so many stories about you." I studied her carefully, not with suspicion but with quiet curiosity. She didn't try to replace anything or anyone. She simply existed beside him, steady and present. After she left that evening, Daniel asked nervously, "What do you think?" "I think you look happy," I said honestly. He smiled, relief softening his face. Months passed and the bond between us continued to grow stronger. We talked more openly than ever before, about fears, mistakes, hopes for the future. One night he confessed, "I used to think strength meant never needing anyone. Now I think it means choosing the right people to stand beside." I squeezed his hand. "You've learned a lot." He laughed softly. "Mostly from watching you." Late one evening near the anniversary of the wedding that never happened, we sat together on the porch watching the sky turn violet. The air smelled of rain, and everything felt still. "Do you ever feel angry about what happened?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. "I felt hurt for a long time," I admitted. "But anger fades when you see what came from it." We found our way back to each other. He nodded slowly. "That day changed me more than I realized." "It changed both of us," I said. "Sometimes life removes something that isn't meant to stay, even if it hurts at first." He leaned back, looking at the stars. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but I know one thing for sure. No one will ever make me question your place in my life again." The words settled over me like a warm blanket. As the night deepened, he rested his head against my shoulder, and for a moment time folded in on itself. The boy he had been and the man he had become existing together. I realized then that the story didn't end with a broken wedding or harsh words. It continued in quiet dinners, long walks, shared laughter, and the steady rebuilding of trust. Because family isn't defined by who invites you to a celebration. It's defined by who comes back to sit beside you when everything else falls apart. And as we sat there under the quiet sky, I felt something simple and powerful. Peace. Not because life was perfect, but because we had learned how to hold on to each other through every imperfect moment that came our way.